I'm currently a sophomore in college. This past year, I was living in the dorms and I had a room all to myself. The dorm building that I lived in is pretty old, but it's nice, and I lived on the 3rd floor. I really liked my room because it's the farthest room to the end of the hallway. Over the course of the semester, I got to know a good number of people that lived on my floor, and I ended up making some pretty good friends. But one night, after I got ready for bed, I turned off all my lights and tried to fall asleep. I was just starting to feel nice and relaxed when I started to hear a noise in the hallway off in the distance. Generally, our dorm building was pretty quiet, and I was trying to sleep, so it was slightly annoying. It sounded like someone's phone was doing text-to-speech in the hallway, and I could hear it getting closer towards my room. But as it got closer and closer, I could hear that the voice on the phone was not speaking English. I'm not sure what language it was, but I know it wasn't Spanish either, and I couldn't recognize what it was exactly. To be honest, it didn't really sound like a language at all. I heard it keep getting louder and louder until I could tell that it was right outside my door. This was kind of suspicious because I was the farthest room to the end of the hallway, and I knew it wasn't the guy who lived next to me, so I didn't know why somebody would be outside my door. I listened to try to hear what was going on, but I didn't know what it was. Then I remembered that I hadn't locked my doors. I know it's a bad habit, but I just rarely lock my door unless I'm leaving my dorm room for a long period of time. I started to panic, and then I thought I was going to have a heart attack when I heard the door slowly start to open and I saw light start to fill my room, which had been pitch black. I saw someone in the doorway, but they were mostly blocked from my view, with me being in my bed and the door being in the way. I just saw their arm sticking out beyond the door, pointed towards me, holding a phone, which is where the sound was coming from. It was still playing a robotic voice, speaking something that I couldn't understand at all. This continued for several seconds, until they took another step in my room, which revealed them to be what looked like a guy wearing a ski mask. They pointed their phone at me, and I asked what they wanted. They then slowly backed away and left the room. I quickly got up and shut my door and locked it. I had a really hard time falling asleep after that. I tried to tell myself that it was just a college kid pulling a prank, or maybe someone who was drunk, but I just had a strong feeling that it wasn't. I did my best to just forget about it, and eventually I fell asleep. The next day I got an email from the resident assistant at my dorm. It was sent to everyone on my floor with the subject, "Floor Incident." The email went on to say how a suspicious person was seen in the dorm who didn't live there and asked if we knew anything about it to contact them. I told them my story, but I never heard anything beyond that. I'm a college student, and I don't own a car. Because of this, I walk everywhere around campus. I don't mind this though because it's good exercise, and the weather is pretty nice all year round in this part of the country. Last year, I worked at one of the buildings for my college job on campus, and one night after a shift, I was walking home from work at about 11 o'clock at night. It was about a 20-minute walk to my apartment, which was a short ways off campus. Once I got off the school campus, things got a lot quieter and darker, which was slightly creepy, but I had done the walk 100 times, so I didn't care. That is until I noticed what sounded like footsteps behind me. I looked over my shoulder, but I didn't see anyone at all. For whatever reason, I was just a little scared. I walk literally everywhere and have walked many times at night, so I don't know why this particular time it freaked me out a little bit, but it just did. I continued my walk, and several other times I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but every time I looked, I never saw anyone. It was very dark out, however, so I didn't have a good view behind me, but nevertheless, I just kept walking. Finally, I made it to my place, which was an apartment, but had access to my door from the outside. I went to my door, unlocked it, and went inside. Then I locked my door and started walking to the bathroom to take a shower before bed. Just as I was walking into the bathroom, I heard the doorknob to my front door turn. I immediately got a terrible feeling. I lived alone and I wasn't expecting anybody, and it came to my mind how I felt like I was being followed all the way home. I didn't hear anything for a few seconds, so I slowly made my way over to the door and peeked out the window. I saw what appeared to be a man walking away, but he was pretty far off by that time. After about 20 minutes, I convinced myself he was gone, and I got ready for bed. I locked my bedroom door and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up, and everything seemed normal until I opened my bedroom door to see that everything in the rest of my apartment was messed up. I immediately got back in my room and locked the door, then I called the police. I felt like an idiot for not calling them the night before. I stayed in my bedroom until they came, but whoever broke into my house was long gone. Somehow they were able to pry my front door open, and I didn't even notice in the night. I'm a really deep sleeper, but I'm still surprised I didn't wake up from it. In the end, I had a few things stolen, but I'm glad I was okay. This story happened several years back when I was in college. I attended a very large and old university, and it was coming to the end of a semester. I decided to go to one of the engineering buildings one night where one of my classrooms were, so I could study for the final test. I had a lot of work to do, and I wanted to be free of all distractions. I was an engineering student, and one of our buildings let you go into the classrooms if there wasn't a class going on, so I went in and began studying. I studied for hours and hours, and in the process, I completely lost track of time. I started at about 8 p.m., and I ended up making a lot of good progress and was almost done when I heard a knock come from the door I was at. I was a little bit startled, but I thought maybe a janitor wanted to clean the room I was in or something. I looked at the clock and saw it was just past midnight. Nobody had been in the building at all when I got there, so I looked out the door, but I didn't see anybody. I thought it was a little strange, so I walked over to the door and looked out. The hallway was completely empty. Then I opened the door and looked out of it into the mostly dark hallway. Then, as my eyes looked to the end of the hall about 50 feet away, I saw a man's head peeking out almost sideways from around the corner. He was smiling at me in the creepiest way. He looked to be at least 40 years old. It was a very creepy sight, and the way he was smiling with his eyes so wide at me, he looked to be completely insane. Then, he slowly stuck his head out farther and farther from the corner, and I saw that he appeared to be wearing a suit and a tie. It just seemed so odd and creepy. He kept his eyes locked on mine for a good 5 to 10 seconds. Then, he suddenly jolted back behind the wall where he was. I had no interest in staying in that building any longer. I quickly went back into the classroom and gathered my things into my backpack. I walked out into the hall and made sure that the man wasn't there. I walked as fast as I could down the hallway and out of the building. Once I got outside, I felt much safer. I started walking quickly through campus to get back to my place, but before I got too far away from the building, I turned around and looked back at it. I saw on the second floor front window, the man was there. He was looking at me with the same creepy smile and wide eyes, and slowly waving at me. I turned and ran all the way back home. Every time I had to go back to that building for a class after that, I was always a little creeped out. I never went back to that building at night again.